Now we have Sammy Reshevsky. Samuel. This was his USCF rating, 2713. He was a Grandmaster. He was one of the inaugural recipients of the Grandmaster title when it was standardized in 1950 by FIDE. Samuel Herman Reshevsky was born in Ozorków, Poland on November 26, 1911. He died April 4th, 1992. He learned to play chess at the age of 4. At 8 years of age, he was already giving simultaneous exhibitions and defeating some of Poland's most prominent players. After World War I, Reshevsky immigrated to the United States, and as a 9-year-old, his first simultaneous exhibition in the States was with 20 officers and cadets at West Point. He won 19 of those 20 games and drew 1. He toured the United States and played over 1,500 games in simultaneous exhibitions as a 9-year-old. He only lost 8 out of those 1,500 games. Can you imagine? In his early years, he didn't go to school, and so his parents ended up in Manhattan's Children's Court. But Julius Rosenwald stepped in as a benefactor. Rosenwald was the founder of Sears and Roebuck, and he agreed to provide for Reshevsky's future if he would devote himself to completing his education. And so Reshevsky abandoned chess for a good decade and pursued a vocation as an accountant. He received his accounting degree from the University of Chicago in 1933. He put that degree to use in New York City. But he did devote himself to tournament chess after that, and he played in the Avro 1938 tournament. He played in the World Championship tournament after Alekhine died. And get this, between 1936 and 1942, he had a streak of 75 U.S. championship games without a single loss. He won the United States Open in 1944, the Pan American Championship in 1945. He played in a total of 21 United States chess championships, beginning in 1936, and the last one he played in was 1981. He won 8 of those, by the way, the first 5 consecutively. Over the course of his long international career that continued till he was 80 years of age, by the way, he qualified for the candidates 5 times. He played 11 different world champions, beginning with Emanuel Lasker all the way through to Anatoly Karpov. In 1981, at the age of 70, he tied for 3rd place in the United States Chess Championship. That's amazing. And he took 1st place in the powerful Reykjavik Open at the age of 72 in 1984. Wow. Sammy Reshevsky, ladles and jelly spoons, not to be trifled with. And he became a bitter rival of Bobby Fischer. He hated Fischer. He came to hate Fischer. I doubt he hated him at this juncture, but he came to loathe, despise Bobby Fischer. One time they were in a tournament and he was interviewed and asked about his prospects of winning the event. And he said, I couldn't care less if I lose every single game as long as I win against Fischer. I'd be glad to come in last place as long as my game against Fischer was a win. What venom. Anyway, we have a Sicilian defense here as well. Knight f3, e6, another French variation. d4, pawn takes, knight takes, and a6 is the Khan variation. That's named for Ilya Khan, who was born May 4th, 1909, and passed away December 12th, 1978. Ilya Khan was a Soviet chess player who was an international master. C4 is the Maroczy bind. That's named for Geza Maroczy, who lived from March 3rd, 1870 to May 29th, 1951. Maroczy was a Hungarian player, one of the leading players on planet Earth in his time, and also one of the inaugural recipients of the official Grandmaster title in 1950. Knight f6 here, knight c3, bishop b4 pins the knight to the king, bishop d3. Now queen b6 is not usually played. I think this might be the only time it's ever been played. Knight c6 is usually played, Bronstein's variation, which is named, of course, for David Bronstein. That's the book move. David Bronstein, I'll tell you, you probably already know, lived from February 19th, 1924 to December 5th, 2005, a Soviet chess player, a grandmaster in 1950, and barely missed becoming world champion in 1951. One of the world's strongest players from the mid-40s to the mid-70s, and he was described by his peers as a creative genius and master of tactics, and of course a renowned chess writer. The book on the Zurich International Tournament 1953, widely considered one of the greatest chess books ever written. Bronstein's variation is the usual move here, which is answered by knight takes and queen's pawn takes the knight. Not played by Reshevsky. Reshevsky playing queen b6 here. Bishop to e3, and there are a lot of threats looming here. We can open this door, hit the knight. We can move this and hit the queen. Reshevsky takes this knight with check. Pawn takes. This threat still looming. Queen a5 was played, and that not liked by the bot. Bobby Castle's out of the line of fire. And here d6, c5, queen c7. So d takes c5 is recommended, and that will compel the knight to come to b3, which hits the queen and super attacks this pawn. So after queen c7, we grab this pawn, and black cannot castle. So I'm not sure if the bot really is quite right here. If he develops to hit our bishop, we just come back to a3, and black still can't castle. All right, let's come back. So even though the bot recommending pawn takes, that's a bot move, a great grandmaster like Reshevsky says, no way, I'm going to play queen c7. So c takes d, queen takes the d-man, and now f4, threatening the fork. So queen e7, yeah, queen c7 might work better. Queen c7, how about rook b1? Doesn't like rook b1. Okay, doesn't like my idea. But anyway, queen e7 from Reshevsky, and c4. Yeah, I don't know about knight here. Bishop f2 would be another idea. That does get a star. c4 played by Bobby. e5, now knight b3. And queen's knight does finally get out of bed here to d7, and that prevents the bishop from coming to c5. So pawn takes the pawn on e5, not liked. And typically, I play f5 in this position. You've seen me play this 100 times probably if you've seen me play it once. I only get a check mark for that. Pawn takes the pawn, knight takes the pawn. Bishop c5 is now played because the knight's no longer there to stop me. Queen d8, super attacking the bishop on d3. Yeah, that's better than queen c7, I would imagine. Queen c7 is inactive. Oh, it changed its mind to a star. Constantly changing its mind. Well, bishop d4 here, marked inaccurate. Bishop e2, yeah, bishop e2's interesting, and that would really threaten bishop d6, so it would compel him to trade queens. And we'll take that with our queen's rook, because our king's rook is already on an open file, fickle bot. Yes, NM is national master, IM is international master, GM is grandmaster. Back when this event took place, Reshevsky was an international grandmaster. The United States, back in those days, had its own national grandmaster title. The United States Chess Federation awarded the title master if you were 2200, senior master if you were 2400, and grandmaster if you were 2600. But that became awfully confusing because then you had to differentiate between a national grandmaster and an international international grandmaster, which was the title conferred by FIDE. So nowadays, there's no such thing as a national grandmaster. All grandmasters are international. And so you don't actually have to use the word international anymore when you say grandmaster. Now, some of us still do it by habit because it's what we've said all our lives. International grandmaster. I myself am an international grandpatzer, but that's another story. All right, coming back. After bishop d4, Reshevsky played queen c7, queen d2, bishop e6, and that's a super attack on this pawn. 3 attacks. You do not want to take that bishop, by the way. On knight takes the bishop, we'll play bishop takes his knight here. And after pawn takes, then I grab this. And you've got doubled isolated pawns and a rook aiming at the forward one, and your king is still in the center. So, bishop e6, much better move. Queen f4, king's knight to d7. Bishop now comes to e2. Pawn f6. That opens the h5, e8 diagonal, so Bobby gives check and provokes a weakness. g6 and bishop back to e2. Reshevsky castles his king, and now queen's rook to c1. Queen's rook to c8, pawn c5, knight c6. Right, this actually threatens to win with bishop takes knight, removing the defender of our bishop. So Bobby retreats his queen to defend the bishop on d4. Now the king's knight comes to e5. Don't take this bishop here. On knight takes bishop, we have knight takes knight attacking your bishop. And you'd have to play, well, I guess you could take this pawn. But I'm playing c6 here, and after pawn takes, I'm playing bishop takes this pawn. Probably can take this pawn as well. Either or. Yeah, you'd have to play queen here. Okay, so we're not playing knight takes the bishop. We're playing king's knight to e5. The bot says, no, you should have played knight takes the bishop. Okay, I said don't. The bot says do. Who are you going to believe, me or the bot? Bishop b2, queen's rook to d8, pawn h3 here prevents any infiltration. Now rook d7, king h1, queen d8, king's rook to d1, king's rook to f7, pawn to a3, rook takes the rook with check, rook takes the rook, and rook d7 interposing, rook takes the rook, queen takes the rook, now knight to d4, knight takes the knight, queen takes the knight, queen takes the queen, and we are fast moving toward a draw. After bishop takes queen, king comes to the center, as does the white king. Now bishop c4, bishop takes the knight, bishop takes the bishop, now bishop d6, and you'll note opposite colored bishops should be drawn. There are exceptions. Bishop d3 hits the E-man, so e5 and f5. King f2 and g5. Pawn g3. Get your pawns on the opposite color of his bishop. Bishop e4. King e3. Bishop d5. Bishop c7. King e7. Pawn h4. Pawn f4 check. Pawn takes the pawn. And now the g-man takes the h-man. Now normally we like to capture toward the center, but not in this case. He's created himself a passed pawn, and you'll note that the bishop is defending the promotion square. So white has to prevent this pawn from promoting. How does he do it? He plays f5, and he's going to defend h2. So h3, we don't give him time to play h2. Well, he throws in a check. That's pretty slick. King f7. Now king f2 is a remarkable move. The point now is this is coming with check. So if you play h2, I play the discovered attack. He played bishop e4 hitting this pawn, and so king g3. That eval bar moved a little bit in black's favor, but believe me, this is dead equal. You can play e6 here, by the way, if you want to. And after king f6, e7, obviously that's got to be answered by bishop c6. And yeah, it's all the same thing. It's just different. Coming back, Bobby with king to g3, Bishop takes the pawn on f5, bishop to c7, bishop to d7, bishop to a5, king to e6, bishop to b4, and here we get the blockade. Okay, it says king takes h3, the bot does, but it's irrelevant because this is a discovered check and king g3, and it's literally the same thing, it's just different. Bishop to b4, just blockading everything is what Bobby is doing. He says, I'm just going to, even though, look, it looks like black, it might seem like black is clearly better. The eval bar says black is better. But how are you going to make any progress with these two extra pawns? So king h2, pawn h5, king g3, king d4, that's e4, sorry, mouse slip, king d4, king h2, pawn h4, and now king g1, and it's back and forth all day. All right, so we have a drawn game here between these two greats.